So, hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Peter Sam the Narrow Gauge Engine here, and we're almost done with our Ranking Every Blank series. Today we're looking at 13 episodes from a spin-off show called Jack and the Pack, and they're 13 really good episodes. I love them. If you want some history of Jack and the Pack, I'll just break it down for you quickly. Jack and the Pack was a sort of construction, sort of demolition alternative to Thomas and Friends. If you watched my Ranking Every Season 6 episode worst to best, you'll know that they two of the episodes were dedicated to them. The first series of Jack and the Pack, which was comprised of these 13 episodes, they were filmed but never released until later on in the show's history. This was due to Hit Entertainment buying the franchise and deciding, well, you know, we kind of have Bob the Builder as well, so we don't want two construction-based TV shows. There were 12 characters in total, and they're all very unique, very different from each other. My favourite is Isobella because I love the colour yellow and she's just amazing. Also, another thing to note, I will be calling these episodes by their original names, not the names that Hit slapped onto them, because Thomas and Percy featured in 2 seconds of them. So if you go to watch these episodes and then realise they have a different name, that's why. Yeah. So let's move on to number 13. In number 13 is Nelson Gets Carried Away. Nice to see a lesser-known character like Nelson even gets his own episode. I like the concept of how Nelson, being the transporter, for once wants to be carried, and it's nice to see his wish come true for once. But apart from that, this episode really doesn't have much story, much structure. It's very sort of season 7-y in that sense. But let's move on to number 12. In number 12 is Byron Saves the Day. This is just another episode that has no real structure to it. Byron doesn't feel appreciated enough, so it takes like saving Alfie to do it. I think the moral should have been completely different. I think the moral should have been that Byron should have learned that, you know, you don't have to know you've done a good job by others telling you that you've done a good job. The only thing that swayed me with this one was the tense scene where Byron, you know, tries to save Alfie. It's so satisfying to watch Alfie sink into the mud, and the set in this is just beautiful. But let's move on to number 11. And in number 11 is Oliversaurus. This episode is fairly moderate for me. I don't have many complaints for this. I don't have any, actually. It's just a bit in between. I just really like the concept of Oliver finding dinosaur bones, and I love that slow reveal of the dinosaur over time where Oliver's just digging really carefully. It's beautiful. But yeah, not much else to say about this episode, so let's move on to number 10. Next up in number 10 is Jack Owns Up. I love this episode for its moral and its writing. It's just beautiful. I wish Thomas episodes were like this. You know, even back in season 1, there weren't episodes that had morals as strong as this. There's no spectacular crash in it, but I don't think it's needed in this episode, and it pains me to put it at number 10. But I mean, the other 9 episodes are just so much better. So let's move on to number 9. Now, next up in number 9 is the lightning tree. The set in this episode is so beautiful. It's like reminiscent of Henry's Forest back in season 3. And I love how everyone rushes in to stop the tree from falling. It's just a great scene. And Jack still manages to help in the end, you know, despite, you know, not holding up the tree. Although I think the story's a bit weak, if I'm honest. There's not real substance to it. So let's move on to number 8. Next up in number 8 is Scaredy Scaredy. I love this episode. You know, the tale of the one-eyed truck is eerie, even though we hear like half of it. And we never see the one-eyed truck, which I just think is stupid. But Max and Monty being scared out of their wits is great, and it's made all the more better when they realise it was Thomas that they were running away from. But let's move on to number 7. Next up in number 7 is the Tortoise and the Hare. Now we'll get into the episodes that I really like. I like Buster. He's a nice version of George, and just like Nelson, he gets to achieve his goal, and Buster's goal is to win a race. I also love how Max and Monty lose the race because they speeded, and they're arguing over who came second is also funny. I like that. Very good episode. Let's move on to number 6. And in number 6 is Buster 1, Mole 0. This is the better Buster episode, mainly because it displays why he's useful. It's clear he never really sees the light of day much, and yet he still is useful. I also love the moles watching Buster as he flattens the molehills. Speaking of those molehills, it's so satisfying to see them get smushed. Just a great episode and I love it to bits. But let's move on to our top 5. Before we get into our top 5 picks, can I just remind you to like, subscribe. It shows your support and I'm grateful for it. But without any delay, let's move on to number 5. So in number 5 is Kelly's Windy Day. I love Kelly's arc in this. Obviously, a crane dealing with the wind is a real problem, and it's nice to see TTE try and deal with this. But the best part of this episode is when, you know, he's saving Isobella. The music and just the setting is just so tense. But anyway, let's move on to number 4. And in number 4 is Alfie Has Kittens. In this episode, Alfie learns that his supposed shortcomings are actually a blessing in disguise, which I really like. I also like how Max and Monty call Alfie names that are sort of related to his height. And Alfie's saving of the kittens is just such a heroic act, and I think that's what makes him a favourite of the pack. I don't have any complaints for this episode, but let's move on to number 3. In number 3 is Who's the Boss. I love Patrick's character, and it's a shame we only get to see him once. And I also love how he causes everyone to argue about who the most important is, which eventually leads him to crash into his own concrete. Such a fitting comeuppance for such a great character. There are no holes in this episode, there's no flaws, I just love it. But let's move on to number 2. So in second place is Another Fine Mess. Ned wanting to demolish things but not being able to is a great concept. And when Ned accidentally does knock down the building, it's just, it's so cool as well. Especially because Oliver and his wrecking balls can't. Oh, and also...
Ouch! Said Oliver. Ouch! Ouch! Ouch!
So let's move on to our top pick. And in number 1 is Mud, Glorious Mud. As I said, Isobella is my favourite character, and this episode is why. Despite Isobella not wanting to get her paintwork dirty, she drives through the mud to save her friends and help them out. It's such a selfless act, and you can see her get dirtier and dirtier over time. Isobella might be snooty, but she does what she does when it counts, and that's when I love her. So thank you all so much for watching. Episode 6 of Tales from the Railway is coming out soon, I promise you. It should be done at the weekend. I've got all the lines down. It's just filming I need to do now. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all then. See you later.